welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. Here's the beginning of Judges 2. An angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal and said, I made you go up out of Egypt, and have brought you into the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their God shall be a snare unto you. The book of Judges begins a new era in the life of Israel. It was now time for the nation to be developed into its own land. The angel of the Lord had appeared to Joshua at Gilgal at the start of this adventure and issued orders. Now he reappears to ask why his orders have not been obeyed and to announce that Israel would no more prevail in battle. Throughout this passage, the angel repeatedly speaks as one with divine authority. The only rational explanation of his authority is to view him as that distinct, mysterious person, separate from and yet one with Jehovah, who was later called the Word made flesh. His words are stern. He recites the favors he has showered on Israel, which should have inspired them to glad obedience. He recalls the conditions on which they had received the land: no entangling alliances with the inhabitants, no tolerance of their idolatry. He charges them with disobedience, and in breathtaking solemnity shows his eternal, unchangeable response to sin by asking exactly the same question as had been asked of Eve: what is this that ye have done? And he declares the punishment about to follow in the paralyzing of Israel's conquering arm by the withdrawing of his conquering might, and in the seductions by the native inhabitants to which they would fall victim. God's benefits makes those who receive them more guilty than if there had been no blessing, if they become disobedient. Further, God bases his right to command our commitment to him on them. He had made strong eternal covenants with Israel, guaranteeing her protection and prosperity in this new land. But there were conditions. This passage shows how covenants with God as sworn he would never break, he counts as no longer in force when people refuse to fulfill their part of them. Another translation of this passage speaks of the unreasonableness of departing from God. When God asks, what hast thou done? There is no living person who dares to answer. And when his next question is, why hast thou done it? There's no reasonable answer to that either. The simple fact is, people sin when they allow themselves to become so fascinated with the world as to risk learning its ways and thus getting a snare to their souls. Old literal Canaan is a type of the spiritual land each of us have within ourselves. We're as unable to conquer it into a beautiful nation with God's help as the Israelites were to cross Jordan and subdue the wild, fortified, numerous peoples before them by their own force of arms. Since any truth with idol worshippers had been made contrary to their covenant with God, he would not be party to those agreements, so their self-inflicted punishment must be to bear moral and physical destruction, inevitably arising from those associations. Likewise, anyone who makes league with fleshly passions and temptations must have the graces and protections God had promised breached here and there for ready access by the enemy's hordes. Our souls live in walled cities when we walk with God, but when we despise his commandments and disobey his will, the walls of our souls get cracks and fractures in them, through which the muddy flood tides of the world's corruption surely surge and ebb. God has a better salvation for us than that. These things are happened to those old people for an example, in this case, of what not to do. God help us do better. Have you talked to him today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfiveminutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.